Hey friends, it's me, Harry Enton, and today we're discussing how Democrats and why Democrats are in their strongest position in decades. I dare say it's a historic position heading into a midterm election. And if you stay tuned till the end, we'll talk about Donald Trump and how he's in a historic position as well and how that is fueling Democrats in the midterm opportunities. But let's start off with the economy, because as Jimmy Carville is fond of saying, it's the economy, stupid. And in the case of you, the audience, it's the economy, smarty pants. And this number really just jumps off the screen, because take a look here. When you poll Americans on how they feel about the current and future economy, we get the worst ever consumer sentiment ever. And this measure has been taken since the mid-20th century. And of course, we are now in the 21st century. It is down, get this, 38% since the start of Trump's term all the way back in January of 2025. Just a massive decline. And this is fueling Democrats. It's fueling Democrats on the most simple of questions. That is, you identify as a Democrat, Republican, Independent, etc. And when we allocate those independents, look at this, to the Democrats, Republicans. Democrats right now have a 13-point lead. A 13-point lead on Republicans on this most basic of measure. And when we look back at prior midterm cycles, at this point, this 13-point lead is bigger than any in at least 20 years. It even beats 2006, when Democrats easily took back the U.S. House of Representatives and gained 6 Senate seats, which if it happened this year, Democrats would be, yeah, that is perfect for us. We would take back the Senate as well. Now, when you look at this party ID lead, this is fueled in part by the simplest of questions. What's the most important problem the country is facing in your mind, and who do you trust to solve it? Well, right now, Democrats, hello, it's that same 13 points. It's that same 13-point lead that Democrats have over Republicans on which party they trust more to handle the top issue. And that, look at this. This really tells the story. Look at 2022. Republicans were trusted more by 11 points. More by 11 points. This is the inverse of that. This lead, this 13-point lead, look at, this green line. This is very similar to what we saw all the way back in 2006, which I said is exactly what Democrats want to happen, right? Take back not just the House, but take back the United States Senate as well. These figures, very similar, and this very much unlike anything else on your screen. But when you put it all together, the simplest of questions, who are you going to vote for? Democrats or Republicans in the midterms? Well, what are we dealing with? Well, at this point in midterm cycles, Democrats right now have a 7-point advantage, and that is, again, the strongest that they have had. You got to go all the way back to 2006 when Democrats held an 11-point lead. But this 7 points, look at this. It's more than double what Democrats had in 2018 when, of course, they were able to take back the U.S. House, gaining about 40 seats, maybe 41, depending on how you measure it. But the bottom line is you don't have to worry yourself with the details. That's my concern. But Democrats have a clear advantage on that. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, Republicans have been doing all this redistricting, right? Especially in the South as of recent. Well, this 7-point lead, well, it overcomes, even with the redistricting, it overcomes that barrier. Because take a look at Democrats in the National House vote margin. Right now, their lead, 7 points. What is needed in order to take back the U.S. House with redistricting? You need only a 3-point advantage. Hold on, I'm getting a little parched right here. Maybe someone could hand me a soda. What? Oh, there it is. You know, last week we were going into the colas or cola-like. I don't know what Dr. Pepper exactly is. This is anything but that. This is an A&W Zero Sugar Cream, which is honestly one of my favorites. Let's take a... Oh, yeah. That vanilla cream goodness really does stretch out. One more for the road. Fantastic. Anyway, as I was saying, Democrats right now running well ahead of where they need to be, even controlling for redistricting in terms of the U.S. House vote. Now, the other key factor, right, is it's one thing to have a lead, but if you're not going to show up and vote, what difference does it make? And this tells the story. Absolutely certain to vote in November. Democrats, 75% of them, when you include the leaners, say that they're absolutely certain to turn out and vote in this midterm election. Republicans, it's just 67%. Now, this is an 8-point advantage, which is very, very important, because essentially what that means is you can take that House lead that Democrats have, and if the likely voters, the actual voters, match this absolutely certain to vote in November, that means that lead would be even larger. I feel like I'm in the movie Airplane. Larger. Anyway, I'm not sure if that's exactly quite right, but it's how I remember it in my head. But this 8-point lead is historic. It's historic. This is why I keep saying that Democrats are in a historic position heading into the midterm elections. And it is because of this. Take a look here. Okay, leading and certain to vote pre-midterms about this point in the cycle. You'll notice a lot of the other slides had a lot of Democratic numbers on there, right? This one is mostly all red. That's because Republicans have historically been the ones who are more likely to turn out and vote. But as that Democratic anger has risen with what's going on in Washington, as the coalitions have changed, as the Democratic coalition has become more tilted towards college-educated voters who are more likely to turn out, this is the first midterm cycle at this point in the cycle that I could find in which Democrats say they are more likely to turn out and vote than Republicans. So again, that is supercharging. That is supercharging what that Democratic lead actually is on the generic ballot. That 7-point lead might actually be 8, 9, 10 points when we're talking about likely voters. Now, at the beginning of this segment, I teased that we're going to talk about Donald Trump, right, and how he is supercharging this. Well, one way in which Donald Trump is absolutely supercharging this is when you just look at his ratings. Look at this. Term 2 Trump approval ratings low. All of these within the last 2 weeks, at least at the time that we taped this wonderful little thing. If you're watching it later on, I can't promise, I can do a lot of things, but I can't actually bend time and gravity and space, etc. Look at this. Quinnipiac, 34%. Ipsos, 35%. New York Times, 37%. CBS News, 37%. Fox, 39%. The bottom line is, across the board, Donald Trump is at historic lows for his second term in all of them, sub 40%. Now, why is this sub 40% so important? Because who are the other presidents who are sub 40% at this point in their second term? Well, there are only two that I could find. Richard Nixon in 1974, which of course was the height of Watergate. You had George W. Bush, when of course the Iraq War was absolutely draining on him back in 2006. Both of these cycles, well, you know what they featured? They featured massive Democratic gains. 2006, we mentioned it before, it keeps popping up in all these. That's a very, correlation isn't necessarily causation, but in this case, Democrats absolutely love that correlation. And of course, in 74, Democrats had massive gains in both the Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. And of course, then Jimmy Carter was able to take back the White House 2 years later. Will a Democrat take back the White House 2.5 years from now? We're not to the midterms quite yet. Who's really to say? But at this point, these are the types of historical comparisons that Democrats absolutely have to love. So we've gone through the simple question, which is why Democrats are in a historic position. Why don't you leave a comment in the comments section? We'll see if there's something in there that we really like, and perhaps we will do it on this next go-around between you and me, my dear friends. Until then, cheers.